As far as I can tell, there were two reasons CNN did that town hall last night. One is that CNN came under new ownership last year with the Warner Brothers Discovery merger. And that ushered in a new leader with David Zaslav running the operation, particularly with a key shareholder who has Zaslav's ear. That's John Malone. You see him there next to Zaslav. Now, Malone is a member of Warner Brothers Discovery boards, and he's a conservative guy. He's a conservative billionaire Republican donor who donated $250,000 to Donald Trump's inaugural. And if you read interviews with Malone and track both public statements from Zaslav and reporting, it's quite clear the new ownership has an explicit ideological project. They come out and say it, to make the network more Trump and Republican friendly. And that ideological project is so strong that they will do that even if, that costs them viewers and revenue, which it seems to have been doing recently. Which brings us to their second reason for this town hall. And believe me, I work in this business, I understand. Ratings. It is not a novel observation to say that there is a car crash quality to Donald Trump. I saw it on social media last night. People hate watching. He compels attention in spite of ourselves. But here's the thing. Even that is fading quite a bit. Last night, 3 million people watched this event. Now, that's a lot of people, but that's not a crazy number. It is nothing like Trump would draw in 2016. I mean, Tucker Carlson used to get on that a typical Tuesday night before he got fired. What is galling about the decision to do this Trump town hall, to me, is the disingenuousness about the decision to do it. Today, CNN Chairman Chris Licht wants you to believe that was journalism they did that last night. We made a lot of news, he says, and then, quote, America was served very well by what we did last night. To state the obvious fact here, that wasn't journalism. It's hard to imagine America was well served by hosting a nationally televised insurrection rally. But the other thing is, there are ways to cover Donald Trump. In fact, there are ways to interview him, which I certainly wouldn't object to, that don't involve a live platform with hundreds of his whooping, cheering superfans ritualistically humiliating your host and network. Michelle Goldberg is an op-ed columnist for the New York Times, and she joins me now. Thanks. What'd you think?
I mean, it was appalling. And, I think everybody thought it was going to be bad, and it was so much worse. And I think it's what you zeroed in on. The thing that made it particularly appalling was that you had this pro-Trump crowd, and there was no need to do that. I think that, look, for better or worse, or not just for better or worse, for worse, Donald Trump is the front runner for the Republican nomination. He is a newsworthy figure. I think it's worth interviewing him on the day after he was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation to find out what he has to say about that. But you don't need to do it in a kind of Trump rally format. And the other thing that's so weird about that statement is that it's actually not journalism to make news. It's journalism to cover news, right? Not to kind of set up an event in which there's going to be kind of a lot of outrage reaction, and then you can boast about driving the conversation.
I mean, the other thing I'll say is, and this I think relates to the ratings a little bit, and people will say, well, people aren't paying close attention. But, I saw people say that part of the news was he refused to commit on pardoning the Jan 6ers. Like, he said this, he's been saying this all over the place.
Right.
It's not like there was nothing new. He doesn't say anything new. He says the same things.
Right. But I actually think there's sort of a mix there's like a mixed thing there, in that the fact that he's saying this stuff, but he's not saying it on CNN and he's not saying it outside of the kind of right-wing ecosystem, means that a lot of people have been able to put it to the side, forget about it. And I think there is value in everybody being reminded of it, but you don't need to do it on such explicitly pro-Trump turf.
Yes, and I think this is actually where I think you and I agree that there is some real thorniness here about what to do about this sort of attention black hole, and we've all sort of wrestled with it over 8 years. There's a certain school of thought, it shows up in my inbox and in my Twitter feed, of like, don't play him at all, don't cover him. It's the coverage that gives him power itself. And I don't agree with that. Like, he's powerful because he says things like the Republican base likes, which is where his power comes from. So I think that, like, there's an overcorrection the other direction. You even said that the other day. I thought it was interesting about the E. Jean Carroll thing, which is like, the ex-president is being civilly tried for sexual abuse. Like, it feels like it should be a bigger story.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was so shocking to me, when I was in the courthouse, just that it wasn't that hard to get into the courthouse, right? At one point I thought I was late, so I went to the media overflow room, but there was nobody there because there was just still plenty of seats left. And yeah, I mean, and I think part of that is that people didn't want, they thought they knew everything that there was to know about that story, right? The stories that we heard at that trial are mostly stories that we've heard before. But again, I think that there's some real nuance here, because I think Trump did lose some of his power, certainly his kind of agenda-setting power, when he lost his Twitter account, when he lost his reach on social media.
Matter, yeah.
Right, it does matter, but it's not the totality of where he gets his political power from.
This is the quote, this is Chris Licht. You don't have to like the former president's answers. We can't say we didn't get them. Caitlin pressed him again and again, made a lot of news, and that is our job. Again, people can tell themselves whatever they need to get up in the morning. But it's also, it does. Here's the thing. I do wonder how are you going to deal with him as the nominee a second time if you are a mainstream news outlet? And it really is an existential question. Because, it's like the Wall Street Journal isn't going to cover both sides of the question of whether their journalist currently imprisoned in Russia should be in prison.
Right, right.
They have a very clear position, the correct one, which is that he's a hostage to the Russian state. And it's like Donald Trump running for re-election, to me, is almost that clear for a press outlet.
And I think that what you see coming from, the sort of justification, well, we have to hear both sides, there is a kind of brain dead rich guy centrism that thinks that it is the sort of middle path between two ideologies, but is really an ideology in and of itself. And so that kind of, it's sort of like, oh, we have, it kind of almost absolves them from having to make moral decisions about what to cover, as if the news was some sort of naturally occurring thing.
And at the same time, if you're a political reporter, or you work at the New York Times, a newspaper I dearly love, an institution I dearly love, or the Washington Post, or a million other places, you can't write. You're not going to. Every article isn't going to be a Chris Hayes opening monologue about how democracy is. You got to write.
Well, let me say this: you would cover, obviously, what does Donald Trump say about E. Jean Carroll. I don't think that you would print all of his defamatory insults verbatim.
Right. Yeah,
right. You don't kind of give him a platform in that way.
Right. And I think making those decisions is exactly the sort of, that's where it gets the minute decisions of what we, even today, what do we show and what don't we? Those, you're going to have to be making those decisions all the time.
Right. And what's frustrating, I feel like, is that they've said it's not their responsibility to make those decisions at all.
Right. But making those decisions is what our job is. That's our job. Michelle Goldberg, always a pleasure.